Hey guys, it's Thorbeard, and I want to talk about Tahm Kench. But before we do, we need to get something out of the way. Tahm Kench is a catfish. He's not a frog. But Thor, have you ever seen a catfish with arms and legs? No, I haven't. But I've also never seen a dog that walks on two legs, uses a cane, and is actually a librarian. But no one seems to have a problem with that. Oh, but Nemesis is a magical dog. Okay, then Tahm Kench is a magical catfish. I study catfish for a living. I know these things. He's not a frog. Have you ever seen a frog with a tail? No. Those are called tadpoles. They're larval creatures, and those are not allowed to fight in the League of Legends. It's in the terms and conditions. Make sure you read it real closely sometime. In addition, while frogs do use their tongues to grab their prey, they do so because their tongues are hinged at the front of their mouth, not at the back. And if you look carefully at Tahm's animations, you can see very clearly that his tongue is hinged at the back of his mouth, which means he can't be a frog. And what he most closely resembles is actually a type of pedomorphic salamander, which really, if you put a top hat on it and called it the River King, would strike a much more realistic resemblance than a frog. But that's neither here nor there. Tahm Kench is a catfish. Okay, now that we've got that out of the way, let's talk about gameplay. One of the cool things that Tahm can do is eat people and get them out of the way. I bet you've never seen a frog do that. Anyway, he can rescue people, get away, and oh, will you look at that? Disconnected. Did I really leave this in here? Wow, it's amazing that anybody watches my videos. Actually, nobody watches my videos, so that's not that surprising. I'm just going to fast forward through this and talk a little bit of item builds before we get back into gameplay. Obviously, Tahm is a big beneficiary of the Cinder Hulk because once he hits level 6, all of his damage scales with health. Plus, because of the passive, on his E, he essentially gets 2 health bars, and he can either regen that or use the active, and then you have to bust through it again. But there's other ways that you could build Tahm Kench too. It actually helps his jungle clear better if you use Devour. Now, it sounds a little bit silly, but actually with Devour, you can walk up to somebody, auto them twice to get your 3 stacks and eat them. And you can always eat allies and run into combat. But eating the enemy deals a significantly larger amount of damage. It's percent health damage, so it's really good at busting tanks. It's really good at getting tanks out of the fight and CCing them so they can't do damage. You can also do it to carries because they're not going to be able to kill you before you get 3 stacks on them and suppress them for 5 seconds. So if you decide to go Cinder Hulk or you decide to go Devour, you still want to stack health. Either way. You go Devour, you build that, and then you build straight health. I would recommend going with the Titanic Hydra at some point because you're going to be doing a lot of auto attack damage, and that makes your auto attacks do damage based on the health that you're already stacking. Warmogs and Spirit Visage are really strong on Tahm Kench because it enhances the regeneration that he already gets, and on top of that, of course, they augment each other's regeneration. So you can take a fight, and if you don't have to pop your shield, you're going to regen basically your entire health bar back, and then if you do have to pop your shield, it's a whole health bar that your enemies have to go through again. Now, we all know why Tahm Kench is so strong. For one thing, it's basically the double health bar that he gets. And for another thing, he really does dish out quite a bit of CC. He can slow people with his Q. It's a pretty significant slow. And then he can walk up and stack some more, suppress them. He can save allies. But why would you play him in the jungle versus other roles? Now, I do think that support is a really good role for him, and so is top lane. But I definitely think top lane and jungle are both better than support because you need gold to get the tank stats that you want to be able to do stuff like ult into the entire enemy team and blow their cooldowns without actually dying. Tahm Kench is actually deceptively weak to teams with a high amount of CC. And this is because if he gets CC so hard that he can't use his shield on his E, he's actually a little bit squishier than other tanks simply because he stacks health instead of resistances, and it's easier to blow through that. So there may come times where you're in a fight and you have to pop your shield a little sooner than you'd like to, but that'll keep you alive long enough to still be able to do the damage versus waiting till the very last second, getting CC'd and blown up through it. Now, a little bit ago, I said the top lane Tahm Kench and jungle Tahm Kench are both better than support. But that sounds deceptively like I don't think Tahm Kench is a good support. And that's definitely not the case. I think Tahm Kench is one of the best supports in the game. He can save somebody from damage while getting a speed boost to get them away from the fight. He's got enormous lane presence because he can threaten to suppress the enemy carry. for an incredibly long time. Plus, he does percent health damage, so he doesn't need items to do a lot of damage necessarily. But if you're going to carry a game as Tahm Kench, I think you're going to get the most amount of damage and the most potential to carry out of the jungle. You can still save your allies, and you can still suppress your enemies, but you're not going to be gold starved, and you might be able to put the entire team in your belly and carry them to victory. If I had to give Tahm Kench a score for solo queue jungling, I'm going to give him a 7 out of 10, because despite all of his strengths and his ability to dish out CC, he's really weak in the early game. His first clear is tough, and he can be easily punished by aggressive enemy junglers. So I hope you guys liked the video. You can click here to subscribe or watch more videos. Tune in next week, and as always, have fun on the Rift! Jeez, my voice is annoying.